r/AskReddit. Which is it one thing you still regret doing it? I allowed my buddy in school to perform a wrestling move on me. He lost his footing while he had me on his back and I fell, teeth first on the ground. My right front tooth shattered 1/4. The pain lasted for a week and also lost my chance at getting braces. A few years ago some friends and I went to a comedy show at a big theater. As we left we made our way to the parkade and we were joined in the elevator by a dude who was just beaming. I mean ear to ear smile. A little spring in step. The works. As we ride to the top floor he looks around and spits out, "Damn what a show, eh?" For some reason I didn't say anything. I looked at my friends and it seemed they were straight up ignoring him, and as I thought of something to say the moment passed and I couldn't bring myself to break the silence. When no one piped up this guy's whole demeanor changed. He slowly slouched. The gleam faded from his eye, that smile slipped right off, and he didn't look up from the floor once. He went from looking like the king of the world to the most defeated sad man I've ever seen. I'm not normally that guy who doesn't know what to say or who ignores strangers, but for some reason it broke that dude. Turns out my friends just didn't hear him. That transformation still haunts me. Bro, if you're out there, yes, the show was a shit. Marrying the wrong person and having a child with them. I love my daughter more than anything, but I wish she had a better family environment to grow up in. Getting married at 19, in 95, not really discovering who I was as a person. Thinking then wow someone loves me, that won't happen again, better not let that go. Having such low self-esteem to put up with 17 years of shit. I do have 2 great kids from it though. Getting morbidly obese. I no longer am, but some damage is done. I feel that most other mistakes I made can be reversed or mitigated, except this one. When I was 15 I tried to kill myself apparently. I was yelling at my mother in the back of the ambulance telling her she should have let me die. I don't remember it, but I wish it never happened. Not accepting that some disabilities come with natural limitations and that figuring out how to work around them is key, rather than boneheadedly insisting there is no limitation until you are forced to concede. Only now you're in a situation with no accommodations and no workaround/treatment, personally or professionally, for your limitations. I called my buddy one night because I knew he was having a tough time. I told him I'm coming over. He kept saying no, I'm good. He was less than a mile away. I said okay, and then his mom called me in the morning saying he was dead. And what did he say to me in the phone call? I wish I went over. Not seeing my grandfather before he died. I was 17. Very much in the puppy love stage of my first relationship and convinced she was the one. Got the news that my grandfather had bowel cancer. He was an amazing man. Despite not having much, he always used to try and make things special for us growing up. He'd appear at 7 AM every Christmas morning dressed as Santa, magic sweets behind cushions in the sitting room. He was a typical grumpy granddad, but underneath that he had a heart of gold. Instead of visiting him, I spent time with her. I had multiple opportunities. Countless times I could have gone and seen him, and I turned those away believing there was always another time. There wasn't. He died before I realized what I'd done. I hope he knew just how much I loved him. He meant everything to me, and I didn't even give him the courtesy of saying goodbye. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. Edit. Really appreciate the kind comments and messages of support. It means a huge deal. As much as it's a sore memory, I had a lovely reminisce today about all the good times we shared. As a side note, he wasn't my grandfather by blood, but he never treated me as any less than his own. He was a tremendous man, and if I can even be half of what he was, I'll consider my life a success. As I said in one of my replies, if you're in this situation please reach out, even if it's just a Skype call or message. Not working hard enough through school. I always did just enough. I got by with average grades, never pushed myself to work harder to get the top grades which I see now I was fully capable of. I just needed to apply myself and work a bit harder. Now I'm at uni, through quite a bit of luck, because my A levels were horrific, and I'm determined to turn it around and make something of the chance I've now got. I didn't take college seriously. I was just going through the motions and never graduated. Now all my closest friends have their careers and are making a good living, while I'm stuck in mediocrity. I never thought about the future back then and it hurt me big time. I'm 1000 steps behind everyone else. This was many years ago when I was a little kid on a holiday with my parents. We went camping and, being the social kid I was, I made friends quickly. We connected through our Game Boys and tried out all the games we had. He borrowed me his cartridge of the Pokemon trading card game so I could play at my own tent. I loved it. When it was time for us to go back home again, I totally forgot it was still in my Game Boy. I said goodbye, got in the car, and fell asleep, since it was a long drive to my hometown. When we got back, I obviously grabbed my Game Boy again, only to notice I accidentally left his cartridge in it. I felt so bad. I was scared he thought I had stolen it from him, since he knew I liked the game so much. Being scared my mother would be angry, I never explained the situation. I hid the game and never played it again. To this day I'm extremely aware of my stuff, especially when I have used other people's things. It's such a silly little thing, but I absolutely still regret it many years later. I missed the last Christmas I had with my grandma to spend it with my now ex-boyfriend who would have otherwise been alone for Christmas. I didn't know at the time it would be our last Christmas with her. We video called, but that isn't quite the same. He broke up with me after I spent a weekend looking after his cat while he was on a work trip. After how he treated me towards the end of the relationship, I realized he really wasn't worth missing out on family time for. I'll probably regret this for the rest of my life. I miss you, Grandma. When I was 7 or 8 years old, I snapped at my dad for getting me the wrong video game, and I can still see the disappointment in his face. Haunts me to this day. Believing the doctor when he said I was a late bloomer at 17. Attending university having not gone through puberty is not fun. Had to wait until I was 23 until I was diagnosed correctly with Kallmann syndrome. I really regret the amount of drinking I did in my 20s and 30s. While I've been sober for over 2 years and don't plan on ever being intoxicated again, I will never get past the guilt and shame I feel for putting myself and my family through god-awful times and events when I was regularly drinking myself into a coma. Acting on my depression. If I knew I'd be here today, I never would have done what I did. Clarification. I attempted to end my life, which I obviously didn't succeed. I regret ever doing that in the first place. I'm happy to be alive. I do not regret failing at the attempt. Rather, I'm glad it did. Some people thought I regretted that I failed, and I still want to die, which is not true. Letting my abusive ex screw up my life as bad as I did. I lost contact with my best friend, and I still miss him daily. I almost screwed up so many friendships. It took me years longer to finish my undergrad degree and could have messed up my chances at further education. I still have PTSD level social anxiety. And for what? A selfish asshole who couldn't feel secure about themselves unless they were screaming at me and hitting me? Nah man. Forget that. What a waste of 2 years of my life. You always have resources if you need to get out of a bad situation. I'm always here to talk if you need an ear. It gets better. You can be free. My younger sister and I got into massive fight when I was 20, she 19, a really big verbal one. We went back and forth for hours, calling each other names that would make sailors blush. Eventually she called me some choice words pertaining to the fact that I was 20, a father and living at home with mum and dad. This really pissed me off as she knew the circumstances that led to that situation. So I called her something hurtful, something that I do not feel comfortable repeating. Her face went from one of absolute anger to just heartbreak, I suppose. She stormed off crying. I was that angry that I just let her without much thought to her feelings. That put a strain on our relationship for the next 7 years. Neither of us were in the same room for more than an hour at most. When we were, it was like a bomb was sitting in the room, and one word could trigger it. What I didn't know, in fact none of our family knew beyond her, was that she was going through some mental issues at the time, and I made them worse. I moved out not long after that, and we didn't really speak for years. Eventually we did bury the hatchet. I did apologize and try to make it right, but it still weighs on my heart that I did what I did that day. It almost ruined my relationship with my sister, and from her mental state at the time, she could have killed herself if not for our younger sister. In community college, a sociology professor asked us to raise our hands and say what religion we are, voluntarily, of course. This was to get an idea of how diverse the class was. Everyone went around and said the typical Christian, Catholic, Muslim, etc. and that was that. The professor then asked, "Are there any others?" So I raised my hand. I don't really identify with a certain religion. I was raised Christian, but I'm more of an evolution, Big Bang, science type of believer. I explained this to the entire class, and the professor asks if there's a name for it. I say, "Oh, Scientology." He just kinda smiled and said great before moving on. Then I learned what Scientology is. Then I learned I'm probably agnostic. This experience had no repercussions other than the fact it still makes me cringe knowing people thought I was a Scientologist. This was about a decade ago. My older brother was graduating high school. We were in the car ready to go, and being an angsty teen, I wanted to go hang out with my boyfriend instead. My brother had some learning disabilities, and in reality shouldn't have graduated. But he did, and it was a big deal for my mom and everyone else. My mom was a high school dropout and always pushed us all to graduate, which we did. I threw such a fit she ended up dropping me off at my boyfriend's house on the way to the ceremony. My brother died very unexpectedly 2 years after that. I never got the chance to apologize for being so selfish, and that is my one true regret in life. I always meant to, but it's hard admitting you wronged someone you loved and chose not to stand there in support of them when they needed it. Graduating ended up being his last big accomplishment, and I missed it to hang out with my shitty boyfriend. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.